I had been on the road for 5 hours when I first noticed how quiet it had gotten. Highway 117 wasn't exactly known for traffic, but that night it felt unnaturally deserted. The darkness around me seemed heavier than usual, as if the headlights barely touched it. The faint hum of my tires on the asphalt was the only sound, steady and rhythmic, and for a while, it kept me grounded. The plan was simple: drive straight through the night and reach my friend's cabin by sunrise. I had done road trips before, but there was something about this highway that made me uneasy. The trees on either side of the road grew so tall and close together that they formed a tunnel, their jagged silhouettes barely shifting in the wind. After passing a small sign that read "No services for 60 miles," I realized I hadn't seen another car for at least 40 minutes. No headlights, no taillights, just the endless stretch of road ahead. Then I passed an old diner. Its sign was flickering faintly, barely clinging to life. The parking lot was empty, but the front door stood wide open, gently rocking back and forth in the breeze. I slowed down slightly, staring at it as I passed, but something deep inside me urged me to keep driving. That was when I started to notice the smell. It was faint at first, like damp earth mixed with something metallic. I cracked my window, thinking, maybe it was just the woods, but the odor only grew stronger as I went on. By the time I glanced in the rearview mirror, I swore I saw movement behind me, something small darting out of the road into the trees. I thought it might have been an animal, but my chest tightened all the same. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It felt oppressive, like the night itself was watching me. Around midnight, I came to a sharp bend in the highway where the guardrail curved dangerously close to the cliff's edge. My headlights swept across the silver rails, and that's when I saw him. A man stood there, motionless, his back to me. He was dressed in dark jeans and a faded gray hoodie, hood pulled up over his head. At first, I thought he was stranded or hitchhiking, but he didn't raise his arm, didn't look up, didn't move at all. I slowed down instinctively, waiting for him to turn, but as my headlights reached him fully, I realized something was off. His body looked tense, unnaturally stiff, and he was standing right on the edge, toes nearly over the drop. I rolled down my window halfway and called out, "Hey, you okay?" No response. I drove past slowly, trying to get a look at his face, but his hood shadowed it completely. When I checked my rearview mirror a few seconds later, he was gone. I told myself I must have missed him stepping into the trees, but deep down, I didn't believe that. A few minutes later, I started hearing something faint under the steady hum of my tires, a soft tapping sound, like knuckles brushing against the roof of my car. I pulled over, got out with my flashlight, and checked the top of the car, the trunk, everything. Nothing there. But when I climbed back in, the smell from before hit me again, stronger than ever. Metallic, damp, almost like rust mixed with something rotten, and in the reflection of the passenger side window, I swore I saw a silhouette behind me in the back seat. I spun around. Nothing there. I started driving faster. The next 40 miles were a blur of headlights, shadows, and panic. My hands were locked so tightly on the steering wheel that my knuckles hurt, but I didn't dare slow down. The highway stretched endlessly, twisting through the woods, and I couldn't shake the thought of that man by the guardrail or whatever he was. My rearview mirror became my enemy. I kept checking it compulsively, convinced I'd see something there, but every time it showed only darkness and the faint reflection of my own terrified face. Then I heard breathing. It was soft, almost drowned out by the engine, but steady and close, like someone sitting just behind me, exhaling slowly in rhythm with mine. I froze, forcing myself to glance over my shoulder. The back seat was empty. I started whispering under my breath, telling myself I was imagining it, but the sound wouldn't stop. The smell wouldn't go away either. It was inside the car now, clinging to the upholstery like damp smoke. Somewhere behind me, deep in the woods, a long, low howl cut through the night air. I pressed harder on the gas, desperate to outrun whatever was out there or in here. That was when I saw the reflection again. The passenger side window caught just enough of my dashboard light to show a pale face, right next to mine. Its mouth hung slightly open. Its eyes were dark hollows. I slammed the brakes so hard that everything in the car shifted forward. I threw open the door, stumbled into the cold night air, and spun around, flashlight shaking in my hand. The highway was silent. The trees stood motionless, but when I turned back to the car, the passenger door was open. I drove the next 20 minutes in silence, gripping the wheel so hard my hands shook. The passenger door had somehow closed itself while I was outside the car. Finally, a faint neon glow appeared ahead, a gas station, its single flickering sign barely visible through the trees. It looked abandoned at first, but the lights inside were on. I pulled in fast, nearly clipping the pump, and rushed inside. The bell above the door gave a weak ring. The place was empty. I called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. I walked up to the counter and froze. Pinned to the corkboard behind the register were dozens of Polaroid photos. All of them showed cars parked outside the same gas station. Different models, different plates, different years. But in every single picture, the driver's seat was empty. I backed away slowly, my breathing uneven, until I caught my reflection in the darkened window. There was someone standing behind me. I spun around instantly, flashlight raised, but no one was there. Somewhere outside, my car horn blared once, sharp and long. Then the sound stopped. I ran back to the car, yanked the door open, and threw myself inside. The smell was overwhelming now, suffocating. In the rearview mirror, a pale figure sat silently in the back seat. The station's lights flickered once, and then went out. I wasn't planning to take the detour. The GPS had pinged me about an accident up ahead, and suggested an alternate route to save 30 minutes. It seemed harmless enough. I wish I hadn't trusted it. The new road was narrow, uneven, and bordered by trees that grew so close together they blocked out most of the fading daylight. My phone signal dropped within 5 minutes, and the GPS froze on a blank stretch of highway labeled Route 8B. I hadn't even heard of it before. The first strange thing I noticed was the silence. No wind, no birds, not even the faint buzz of insects. Just the hum of my tires against the cracked asphalt. Every few miles, I passed old farmhouses with broken windows and collapsed porches. None had lights on. At one point, I saw a rusted pickup truck half buried in weeds, its doors hanging open like someone had left in a hurry. After about 30 minutes, I checked the odometer and realized I hadn't seen another vehicle since turning onto this road. No headlights, no taillights, nothing. Then I spotted the first mile marker. It was crooked, leaning slightly into the ditch. The white paint faded and chipped. The number on it read 313. I thought nothing of it at first until I passed another marker 10 minutes later, and it also read 313. By the third one, my stomach was in knots. I slowed when I spotted the camper on the shoulder. Its headlights were off, but the driver's door was wide open, swaying gently in the breeze. I parked behind it, thinking maybe someone needed help. As I stepped out, the gravel crunched loudly under my boots, the sound unnaturally sharp in the silence. The closer I got, the stranger it felt. The camper looked lived in, fresh tire tracks, clean windows, but something wasn't right. The entire back end was covered in long scratches, deep enough to tear through the paint. Inside, there were 2 coffee mugs on the counter, one still half full. A blanket lay crumpled on the floor next to an overturned chair. A child stuffed rabbit sat upright on the counter, facing the door as though placed there deliberately. "Hello?" called out, stepping carefully into the narrow hallway. No answer. Tried a few cabinets. Inside were clothes, cans of food, unopened water bottles. Nothing suggested anyone had packed up to leave. Then I found a cell phone plugged into the wall, charging, its screen glowing faintly. I picked it up and tried unlocking it, but it was locked with a passcode. That's when I noticed something outside the window, boot prints in the dirt. They led away from the camper and into the trees. I followed them only a few steps before stopping. There were no return tracks. By the time I got back to my car, a dense fog had begun crawling across the highway. Within minutes, it covered everything, so thick I couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. I kept the headlights on low beam and crept forward, trying to stay on the cracked pavement. The road felt endless, stretching into nothing, and my chest tightened with every passing minute. That's when I first heard it, a voice. It was faint at first, like a whisper carried by the fog. I turned down the radio, leaning forward to listen, and I could have sworn it said my name. I stopped the car and rolled the window down. The cold, damp air rushed in, carrying with it the sound of more voices, soft and fragmented, like overlapping conversations just out of reach. I called out, "Hello? Who's there?" The voices went silent instantly. I sat there for what felt like forever before slowly starting forward again, my hands trembling on the wheel. But the farther I went, the louder the whispers grew, always just behind me, like someone was leaning close to my ear. And then came the tapping, light, rhythmic taps against the roof of my car, almost too soft to hear, but definitely there. I gripped the wheel and drove faster, fighting the urge to look up. When I finally glanced in the rearview mirror, there was nothing but swirling fog behind me. But then, just before I looked away, something moved. Through the fog, I finally spotted a glow ahead, a highway sign. Relief washed over me, and I pressed the gas, eager to reach it. But as I got closer, my stomach dropped. It wasn't a new sign. It was the same bent mile marker I'd seen hours ago. 313. I slammed the brakes, heart hammering in my chest. Somehow, I had circled back without ever turning around. The voices started again, louder now, layered on top of each other like 100 conversations at once. My name echoed through the mist, deeper this time, dragging out every syllable. I threw the car into reverse, spun it around, and floored it in the opposite direction, tires screaming on the cracked pavement. The fog swallowed the headlights instantly, blinding me. Then, out of nowhere, a figure appeared in the beam of my lights, tall, pale, standing perfectly still in the middle of the road. I swerved hard to avoid it, nearly losing control. When I looked back, there was nothing there. I don't know how long I drove after that, but eventually, the fog thinned and the whispers stopped. I pulled over, shaking, gasping for breath. I checked my map app when my signal finally returned. According to GPS, there is no Route 8B, and the last ping location on my phone, mile marker 313. I left my parents' house around p.m., planning to drive straight through the night and be home before dawn. The highway stretched out endlessly, nothing but flat fields on either side, and the occasional row of trees breaking the horizon. It should have been relaxing, but something about that stretch of Interstate 41 felt off. There were no cars. For the first 30 minutes, I chalked it up to good timing, but by the second hour, it became unnerving. No headlights in either direction, no semis hauling freight, just me in a car and the long black ribbon of asphalt beneath the wheels. The billboard started bothering me next. I passed one advertising a diner called Maple Grove Eats 5 miles ahead. 10 minutes later, I passed the exact same billboard again. Same name, same picture, same chipped corner at the bottom. That happened 3 times. Around midnight, my low fuel light came on, and my stomach dropped. I checked my GPS, but there were no gas stations listed anywhere nearby. No exits, no towns, nothing. Then, like it appeared out of nowhere, I spotted a small blue sign. Rest stop 1 mile. I don't know why, but I felt instant relief. I shouldn't have. The rest stop sat just off the highway, a single pale building under a buzzing light. The parking lot was cracked and empty, except for one old sedan parked at the far end. I pulled in slowly, gravel crunching under my tires. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed faintly, half the bulbs flickering. There was a vending machine in the corner, but its screen was frozen mid-selection, the lights inside strobing randomly. I walked over to the bathrooms, calling out just to check if anyone was there. No response. I pushed the door open and froze. The faucet was running. The sink filled slowly with water, steam rising faintly as if someone had just washed their hands seconds ago. I turned the tap off, trying to steady my breathing, and stepped back into the hallway. That's when I noticed the front counter. There was a paper cup sitting on it, full of coffee, still warm, chest heightened. I glanced outside. The old sedan was gone, and I hadn't heard it leave. I decided to leave. Something deep in my gut told me to get back in the car and drive until I ran out of gas if I had to. As I walked quickly toward the door, a sound stopped me in my tracks, soft, deliberate footsteps behind me. I turned instantly. The hallway was empty. I walked faster, heart pounding, and heard the sound again. Closer this time, like someone was matching my pace, but just out of sight. I spun around, flashlight in hand, shining it into every corner. Nothing. That's when I noticed something in the reflection of the vending machine glass. A shadow. Not mine. It shifted slightly, like someone leaning forward behind the corner of the hallway. I swallowed hard and whispered, "Hello?" No response. I took a single cautious step toward the hallway. The lights above me flickered once and then went completely dark. Everything was silent except for my own breathing until I heard it. A whisper, right behind my ear. I bolted for the door, throwing myself into the driver's seat and locking it instantly. My hands shook so badly I dropped the keys twice before finally starting the car. I slammed the gas pedal and pulled out fast, tires screeching on the cracked pavement. When I checked my rearview mirror, the rest stop building was pitch black, but there was someone standing under the buzzing streetlight, watching me leave. I drove for what felt like an hour, never slowing down, never looking back, but something wasn't right. The odometer hadn't moved in miles. My phone GPS stayed frozen, locked on the exact same spot as before. I turned on the radio just to break the silence, but it only emitted soft static then. Beneath it, a faint voice whispered my name. I turned it off instantly, my hand slick on the steering wheel. Then, up ahead, I saw a familiar glow in the distance. I slowed down as the shape became clear. It was the rest stop, the same cracked parking lot, the same flickering light, the same frozen vending machine visible through the window. I slammed the brakes and stared at it, heart hammering, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. A soft thud came from the trunk. I froze, barely breathing. Another thud, louder. I didn't move, couldn't move. Then, slowly, my rearview mirror fogged up from the inside. A pale hand pressed against the glass from the back seat. And that was the last sound. I heard the click of the passenger door unlocking itself. The storm rolled in fast, swallowing the last traces of sunset behind me. Sheets of rain hammered the windshield so hard the wipers couldn't keep up. Lightning split the sky in jagged veins, illuminating endless miles of pine trees on either side of the highway. I'd been driving for hours and hadn't passed a single gas station, diner, or rest stop. My phone signal had died somewhere back near mile 247, and the fuel gauge was sinking fast. That's when I spotted a flickering neon sign through the sheets of rain. Ash pine moat relief washed over me instantly. I pulled into the cracked parking lot, headlights bouncing off faded yellow paint and boarded up windows. There were 10 rooms total, lined side by side under a sagging roof. Only one other car sat parked near the far end, half covered in pine needles, inside the office. The air smelled faintly of mildew and something metallic. The receptionist, a gaunt man in his 50s with hollow eyes, barely looked at me as I signed in. His voice was flat when he slid the key across the counter. "Room 6, he said. "Don't switch rooms. And don't leave your window open." I opened my mouth to ask why, but he turned away before I could. When I stepped back into the storm and glanced at the key, I noticed something scratched into the metal. 3 letters, etched deep. "Run." Room 6 smelled faintly of damp wood and cigarette smoke, like no one had aired it out in years. The carpet was stained, the walls peeling, and the single lamp flickered whenever the wind shook the power lines. I dropped my bag, locked the door, and sat on the bed, exhausted. That's when I heard a dull, rhythmic tapping on the wall behind the headboard. 3 knocks. Pause. 3 knocks again. I knocked back once without thinking, half expecting it to stop. Instead, the tapping grew louder, faster, then muffled crying. I froze, leaning closer to the wall. It was definitely coming from room 7. I stepped outside into the rain and crossed to the office, where the receptionist was still hunched over a ledger. "Hey, is someone staying in room 7? They sound upset." He didn't look up. "No one's in there," he said flatly. I waited for him to explain, but he just stared at the desk. When I got back to my room, the crying had stopped. I tried to sleep, but around 2 o'clock a.m., I woke to the Sound of something dragging across the carpet in the hallway outside. Slow, deliberate scraping, moving toward my door. Then it stopped right outside room 6. I held my breath. After a long, silent moment, the tapping started again. This time, on my window. I grabbed my bag and bolted for the car, rain soaking me. Instantly, I didn't care where I ended up, I just needed to get away from room 6. But when I reached the edge of the parking lot, my headlights revealed a massive pine tree collapsed across the road, blocking both lanes completely. I tried the opposite direction, but another tree had fallen there too. The motel was surrounded. I sprinted back inside, breath ragged, and slammed the door behind me. That's when I heard it. The scratching. It came from the vent above the bathroom door. Faint at first, like tiny nails raking metal, but growing louder every second. I climbed onto the chair and shined my phone flashlight into the vent. Something shifted deep inside. It was too dark to see, but I could hear it breathing, wet, shallow, gasps echoing down the ductwork. Then, a whisper, so faint I thought I imagined it. My name. I stumbled back, heart hammering, when a metallic clang reverberated through the walls. The vents ran through every room in the motel. Something was crawling inside them, moving fast, dragging itself toward room 6, and then I heard another sound, coming from all around me. Doors unlocking, one by one. The lights went out around 3 a.m. I sat on the bed in complete darkness, clutching my bag, my keys digging into my palm. I told myself I'd wait for daylight, but then I thought about the sounds in the vents, and the way the doors had unlocked themselves. I couldn't stay here. I sprinted across the parking lot through the rain and into the office. The front door was unlocked. The receptionist was gone. Behind the counter, found a corkboard covered in Polaroids. Dozens of them, all of past motel guests. Each photo had a number scrawled underneath. Room 6, and under each number was one word. Missing. My stomach turned. I ran for the car, fumbling with the keys, rain blinding me as I yanked the door open and threw myself inside. I locked it instantly, heart racing, lungs burning, trying to breathe through the panic. That's when I saw it. The rearview mirror was fogged. A faint outline appeared in the condensation, fingers pressing against the glass from inside the car, and then, behind me, in the pitch black, I heard slow, steady breathing. The storm drowned out my scream. This one leaves the audience with a lingering, unanswered question. Did the narrator ever escape? Or did room 6 claim another missing guest?